In Chapter 3, we'll talk about federalism and the roles of different levels of government in addressing a number of public policy issues. The central question we'll deal with is who has the power? First, let's talk about what federalism is. We can look at it a couple of different ways. Federalism literally is the physical structure of government set forth by the Constitution. It's what divides up the authority between the central government and various subunits. Figuratively, and more interestingly, federalism also involves the relationship between those entities. There's inherent friction in this form of government because the Constitution, given all of its brilliance, only provides vague and contradictory guidance about how power should flow through the levels of government. On one hand, the Constitution's necessary and proper clause gives power to Congress to do what is necessary to carry out its enumerated powers. On the other hand, the 10th Amendment provides that powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. There's a conflict there. You add to that the many problems that the founders couldn't have anticipated. For example, who gets to control the commerce of the internet? It's clear that those contradictions and the resulting frictions result in the central question about federalism, which is, who has the power? This is an enduring question, one that is as old as the United States itself. It's been contentious since the founding of the nation. The ideological debate over national supremacy versus the rights of states ultimately resulted in the Civil War, and even having a war fought over it didn't resolve that question. Still today, vigorous debate over which level of government has the power on any number of critical policy issues, and what we're finding is the levels of government have difficulty in staying in their lanes, in staying focused on what they ultimately have the power over. We see that in any number of issues that we're dealing with today. It's the reason that you see states like Arizona pass laws on immigration and decriminalizing marijuana, in Colorado and Washington in direct opposition to federal law. And we've also seen the national government wade into domestic relations issues that are traditionally the responsibilities of states. We see that the courts intervene frequently to provide answers, but the reality is that there is no enduring answer to this enduring question. The Supreme Court has the final say over where to draw the line between federal and state powers, but courts' interpretations change over the years. So the bottom line is one of the beauties of our system, indeed one of the mysteries of political science, is that each generation gets to struggle with this question and tell us what is correct and allowable. So we're going to take a quick look at some of these current issues in federalism: marijuana regulation, immigration, same-sex marriage, gun laws, healthcare, education policy. We'll start with what I call the haze of marijuana regulations. Federal law is that all pot sales are illegal. Marijuana is in the same category as heroin and LSD. The question is about enforcement issues. The federal government has sent out conflicting signals, but only recently, the federal government says it won't block recreational drug use. The implications for federalism by this decision are uncertain, but could be significant. So what we've seen, even in spite of the federal law that pot sales are illegal, Washington and Colorado, they've legalized marijuana for recreational use. 20 other states, including California, have legalized medical marijuana. And we've also seen at the local level that cities and counties that are experimenting with marijuana regulation. In Mendocino County, trying to regulate marijuana, patients with a valid ID card can apply for a license to grow a maximum of 25 plants. Other efforts we've seen at the county and city levels to either regulate, limit, or outright ban pot dispensaries. We've seen that in Los Angeles, Bakersfield, other places. Los Angeles, for instance, their Measure D earlier this year reduced LA pot shops from 800 to 135. So this is an issue that really cries out for clarification on who has the power. Another issue, immigration. Immigration has long been the authority of national government. The national government hasn't been forceful in dealing with this issue, so states that are frustrated with the influx of immigrants, they're frustrated because they're the ones, the immigrants are coming into these states and they're putting a strain on a number of their resources: education, healthcare, environmental resources, criminal justice. They've been increasingly frustrated, so they're dealing with their own immigration laws. Arizona had the most far-reaching immigration law, that their law authorized police, for instance, to arrest illegal immigrants, and made it a state crime for unauthorized immigrants to fail to carry registration papers or other government ID. U.S. Supreme Court overturned major provisions, but left intact a provision allowing police to check immigration status while enforcing other laws. For most people, the message of the courts on this was immigration is a federal issue. But the Arizona Governor Brewer, she found it for a victory for the 10th Amendment that preserves the rights of states to defend its citizens. So even with this, what appeared to be a fairly clear ruling, there's still room for different interpretations of who has what power. Same-sex marriage, another issue. Unlike immigration, same-sex marriage long believed to be the responsibility of the states. But in 1996, Congress passed the Defense of Marriage Act, denied benefits and recognition to same-sex couples. That was the law until earlier this year, when it was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. And in a ruling, Justice Kennedy said that federal government traditionally defers to state law policy decisions with respect to domestic relations. And state laws on same-sex marriage also are different. That while the Supreme Court overruled the Defense of Marriage Act, not all states allow same-sex marriage. It's legal in 13 states of the District of Columbia, banned in 35 states. In Pennsylvania, for instance, there was a case just a few weeks ago where a judge ruled that marriage licenses given to same-sex couples in the state aren't valid because couples are barred from marrying in that state. So same-sex marriage will return to the state level, but each state will be handling it different. Gun laws, another area where there's intense debate. That federal gun laws, a lot of debate at the federal level about gun control issues. That there's not been clear action from the federal government to change any laws. So states are starting to push back with their own laws. They're having debates about restricting the types of firearms that will be available, limit the capacity of magazines, implementing more stringent background checks. And even in Missouri, for instance, the legislature is expected to pass a statute that would nullify all federal gun laws in the state and make it a crime for federal agents to enforce them. And meanwhile, Congress is also pushing back, saying that our national laws are going to be the ones that people need to pay attention to. Healthcare is another issue. We see healthcare issues where the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, you see health insurance exchanges and expansion of Medicaid as part of that act. But states are taking a hands-off approach. They're opting out of these exchanges or Medicaid or both, refusing to support some consumer protections, and also specific things like restricting federally funded workers hired to help people enroll in coverage, and really taking a hands-off approach to enforcing the law as it expands the role of federal, and that results in the expansion of the role of federal government. Education policy, we see No Child Left Behind. Education policy traditionally seen as a state issue. But we've seen the federal government get involved setting standards on No Child Left Behind. But states have been requesting waivers to not have to follow the No Child Left Behind standards. Even districts, individual districts or groups of districts are looking for waivers from this policy. So while the federal government has the No Child Left Behind Act, states and local districts are trying to gain the power to do what they think they need to do with education, since the real question is, what does it mean to be an educated American, and what do we expect our kids to know and learn? And most importantly, who should have the power in making those decisions? Should we let the national government have a one-size-fits-all approach, or should we allow the states to adapt to their circumstances on who knows best about what our kids are expected to know and learn? So at the end, what we see is a return to the question, who has the power? That's the core of what federalism is about. And this question hasn't been answered in an enduring way for 200 or more years, and likely won't be for that amount of time in the future. Courts are going to continue to play a significant role in deciding which level of government has the power over these issues. As I mentioned earlier, one of the beauties of political science is that each generation will get to consider this question. As the circumstances change, as courts change, as issues come up, the interpretations are going to be different. So your generation will be struggling with these issues the same way my generation did, maybe coming to different conclusions, likely coming to different conclusions. Finally, I want to talk about some concepts that will help you as you prepare for your quiz. That, again, generally, who has the power in the federal system? The federal government has some power, and also states and subunits. So you don't need to answer specific questions about issues, but do know that that power is in the hands of both the federal government and state and subunit levels. What factor was the federal system is the result of what factor? Know what factor led to the creation of the federal system. What are some arguments against federalism? What happens if a state or local law conflicts against a national law? The powers that are held jointly by national and state governments are called what kind of powers? What section of the Constitution gives Congress the authority to regulate trade among states and with foreign countries? Civil War, as I mentioned, was a result of a dispute over slavery, and what other concept? What is devolution? How did the federal government force states to raise the minimum drinking age? And what are federal mandates? Those answers will all be available in your text. This should be a good guideline, a good study guide for your quiz. Good luck.